I'll start with the big one, at least in terms of dollars, school finance. We continue to defend the school finance law the way it is written. That is what we will do. That is our job. It has now been somewhat rewritten with the passage of Senate Bill 7 earlier this year, the block grant bill from the legislature. We're in the process of defending that, defending both the substance of Senate Bill 7 and defending the authority of the legislature to make that change. There are folks who have been engaged in the challenge to the prior school finance formula who now have objected to the notion that the legislature can change the rules. We think they have that authority, but of course it will ultimately be up to folks in the judicial branch, not us or the legislature, to decide what the correct constitutional answer to that is. Status on the various school finance litigation, and there is various litigation. I always try to remind folks of that. It's not a single case. It's at least three that are out there popping around in various forms right now. On the main one, the Gannon case, Gannon versus Kansas, it's the more traditional school finance case. It's the one brought in state court under the state constitutional provisions in Article 6 of our Constitution. It's the follow-on to the old Montoy case, so it's the one that we're all accustomed to, and I think what people usually refer to when they say what's happening in the school finance suit. Status on that is at this moment in time, the suit has essentially been bifurcated. I refer to it as when you go to the eye doctor and they have you look in the little thing and they ask you to say when the one little box is in line above the other and when they've come in. We are now at a point in that lawsuit where the boxes they're not in line. It's not one squarely overlapping. I hope with the proper legal correction, to carry the metaphor forward, they will eventually get back to where we all see one box. But at the moment, the suit's in two parts. On the adequacy question, whether there's enough money in the system from a constitutional standpoint, the current posture is that the three-judge panel in Topeka has essentially said the answer to that question is no. And we are now appealing that decision to the Kansas Supreme Court. Our appeal is lodged. It is sitting in front of the court. The High Court has said they're going to put that on hold until the other half of the suit, the other box, if you will, back in my metaphor, is resolved in the court below. It comes up on appeal, and then presumably, they haven't said this expressly, presumably they'll put them back together and we'll deal with the Supreme Court appeal all at once. I think that's where we're headed. We are now litigating the equity question in front of the three-judge panel, the district court essentially. In Topeka, we had a recent argument on that earlier this month. I think it was the 7th of May, first week of the month. And we just finished the supplemental briefing on that this past Friday. You had the argument, then a chance to put more information in the record, and that window is now closed, and so everything is now in the judge's hands. And we await the decision of the three-judge panel. The question there essentially is whether, from the vantage point of the plaintiffs, if they were articulating it, it's whether the legislature reneged on the commitments that it made with respect to equity that resulted earlier this year in our prevailing on the equity question. We would, of course, characterize it somewhat differently. We think the question is whether or not, once we complied, we, the state, complied with the equity obligations, and the court said, yeah, you're okay on that, whether there's an opportunity to essentially say, well, things have changed, we're going back. Or whether that's a one and done sort of circumstance, and if there's a new objection under the new law to whether constitutional equity has been met, our view would be a new lawsuit would have to be brought. It's a new day, it's a new circumstance. We prevailed on this past one, and you don't get to go back and have a do-over under a different set of rules. And in many ways, that's the core of what we're fighting about, although of course nobody says it quite that way. It's all laid out in lawyer speak that is largely unintelligible to even most of us, I think, that read it from time to time. We brought a lot of money back to the state and its coffers and taxpayers on the Medicaid fraud side. We've now turned our attention a little more to a group of cases that, frankly, there's not a lot of money to be recovered in them, but the fraud is just so in your face that I think the right thing to do is to make sure we devote some resources to investigating and prosecuting them. We have done a sweep of home health care fraud in the state. We've done it cooperatively with the federal authorities, regional authorities out of Kansas City. The name that we have given to it cooperatively is Operation No Show, which is a lot of fun. And okay, it's not that much fun, but for wonkish guys like us, it's a lot of fun. But it reflects exactly what we're talking about. We are prosecuting folks who have gone out, become home health care providers. They're getting paid by the Medicaid program to go to somebody's home and provide care services for them, whether medical or companion care. And then they're not showing up or doing the work, but they're billing for it. Operation No Show. I mean, they're pretty bright line cases. We have filed, I want to say it's about 10 criminal cases so far. We have 4 convictions out of those. The rest remain pending. I would anticipate there'll be another wave of those coming up sometime later this year. And our intention is to just keep rolling them forward because unfortunately, sort of like the federal government with illegal regulations, there is no shortage. It is a target-rich environment in terms of having folks that ought to be prosecuted for thinking they can put their hands in the till and come away with money they are not legally entitled to. And by the way, it's not their money. It's not the government's money. It's all of our money because it's ultimately tax money that we paid in. So we're working on it. We're working on it.